Recorded. Cool. All right, you ready? Hey friend, Catherine here, creator. Wow, I messed up already. Hey friend, Catherine here, founder and creator of Meet Me at the Well. I'm so glad you found my little footprint here in the podcast world. It is an absolute honor to take up some space in your heart and mind today, and I pray it brings great joy into your life, one episode at a time. I have the absolute honor of introducing a dear friend of mine who I have personally just witnessed walk through a heart-wrenching season, but I have also witnessed God redeem and restore her life in God's name. Tacora, or Cora for short and so cute. She grew up in an abusive household and fell victim to the hands of her own mother. She also walked through an abusive relationship with her ex-boyfriend, but she wrote a book about it called My Boyfriend, My Bully. Today, God has restored her life through her passion for dance and an incredible husband who loves her like Jesus. She lives in North Carolina with her husband of 5 years, teaches dance, and even runs her own Christian clothing brand called Mirror Images. You can purchase her book, My Boyfriend, My Bully, on Amazon. I want to preface that we will be speaking about abusive relationships. So if this is triggering for you, please prepare your heart. Take it at your pace to find strength and support from two girlies right here who understand your pain. And if you need to skip this episode entirely, we completely understand. But come back at a later time, friend. Cora, I am so glad to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Oh my gosh, of course. I was just praying over, who I really wanted to bring on this journey with me, and God just brought your name straight to the front of it. And I was like, yes, why didn't I even think about that before? Like, she's
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
Yeah, so I'm so happy. I'm so excited for what God's going to do with this. And I just thank you so much for your vulnerability to say yes and your willingness to say yes. And um, I just appreciate your friendship and just the light that shines within you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
friend. I just like, I love hearing about what God does, man. It's amazing. Let's talk about it though. Can you share a bit of your personal testimony with about like your mom and what you walked through with your ex-boyfriend and how God has just completely redeemed your life?
Yeah, God is so wise in his ways. All of what happened just ended up bringing me closer to him.
Yeah.
So starting back from the top,
Mm.
that I actually grew up in a Christian household. Surprisingly, my parents, they found it a really big deal to make sure that their children were raised in a Christian household, that we went to church every Sunday, that we got dressed up. But unfortunately, as perfect as the creation of marriage is that God has made, we are still human and
Yeah.
they fell victim to their flesh.
Mm.
When they would go home, it was a different story. My mother knew ways how to poke my father and make him feel less of a man, less of a person. And there were times where they were lashing out at each other. My mother was also very cruel to my half siblings. I am the youngest by about at least a decade. So
Oh,
11 years up to 20 years. So I'm the baby of the family and my
same.
parents really value that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
my
you get,
brother's 11 years older than me, and my other brother's 9 years older.
why did I not know that? I think I
I
knew
don't know.
that.
Yeah, I'm listening to you talk right now. I'm like, what? We like grew up in the same house.
Yeah. So they were just I was the golden child. And they kept saying that I brought a light to the household and even when
Mm.
they were fighting, I knew I could close my door and I could just praise and worship. I knew that God was real and I always had that faith. It just started getting tested after my parents became separated. Again, my siblings are much older than me, so it was just me and my mother, and suddenly all of her rage went onto me. And after the initial shock, it was me realizing, okay, God, if I know what they tell me about you, I know that you are all powerful, you
Mm.
are all knowing, you can do anything, you love us, you're good. Why am I in this situation?
Mm. Yeah.
Um, So I didn't doubt that God was real or that he was good. I just doubted that I was good enough or that I was worthy of his love.
Mm.
And so I started thinking, okay, well, maybe my saving isn't in God. Maybe, bless you.
Sorry. Thanks.
No, you're good. But I started thinking, okay, well, maybe my saving isn't in God. Maybe my rescue or escape isn't a guy.
Mm.
And at an early age, I became obsessed with the fantasy of being swept off my feet by a guy. And that desperation sets up the perfect tone for an abusive relationship.
100%.
And
Yeah.
so easily, yes, easily my ex walks into the picture. I was 15. He was the tallest guy in school, perfect blonde curls, gorgeous blue eyes, a killer smile. And he just totally doted over me. Like, love bombs, just bomb after
Yes.
bomb. After,
Yes. Yes.
yes. Like the first day that we were together, he sent me 100 reasons why he loved me. And I never said, I love you. Like that was my first time experiencing this, but I was like, oh, okay,
He
so
loves
this is
me.
what
Yeah.
I've been wanting. This is
Yeah.
perfect. At the same time, he's just loving me. At least I thought it was love. It was
Hmm.
obsession.
Yeah.
My household was just getting worse with my mother, more physically, verbally, mentally, and even spiritually abusive.
Mm.
Um, and so, since I was getting used to all of this kind of hurt and pain and abuse, it snuck up on me when my ex started those same habits
Mm.
of treating me that way, controlling me. His grips on my arm would get tighter, his manipulation, his lies. But, he loved me, right? And so I was thinking it's not all bad and he's my escape. And
Mm.
maybe I could run off and get married with him and I don't have to live with my mother. So I endured it. And I thought that was the best thing for me. But I am so glad to be able to flip the page and declare today that God is so good and only God can bring peace in the darkness,
Yeah.
and provide an escape plan out of it. No guy, no
Absolutely.
passion, no anything. It has to be God.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In the summer of 2015, I was 19 and still living at home with my mother, but actually lied to her and told her that I was at my dad's house. And so I was at a party. I had spent the entire day just living in sin. And I was on the couch of some stranger's house, and my friends were outside smoking and drinking. And I was sitting alone on the couch. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have this presence of comfort or hope over me. And I knew that it was God giving me over to my sin.
Mm.
And it wasn't him doing it out of spite, it was out
Yeah.
of love. Let me realize, oh my gosh, I've been taking God for granted. He was with me and I didn't know.
Mm.
I I needed that realization. And that led me to sobbing on this person's couch. And I realized, okay, God, I don't want to do life without you. And
Mm.
I wasn't perfect or anything the next day. But I was like, God, I need you. I surrender. And what your plans are for me, I want them.
Yeah.
And God was like, okay, break up with your ex. I mean,
Cool.
with your boyfriend. And I was like, oh, are you sure? Because I tried. My ex, he was crazy and legitimately so. I had been scared of breaking up with him. I had tried before because the abuse and the toxicity, but he did have access to weapons. He also had, I guess we could call it collateral. He had private pictures of me where he would threaten to send it to my family, knowing the kind of household that I lived with my mother, just threatening to make
Yeah.
life worse. And so I'm like, God, are you sure you don't want me to wait till I move out? But this time of breaking up with him was different because I was doing it with God. And it
Mm.
wasn't just fear, it was hope. I had something with me. I had God with me. I had him on my side. And so I sent a text to my ex and I was like, hey, we're neither of us are happy in this relationship. This can't be what's meant for us. And surprisingly, I call him Gail in my book, My Boyfriend, My Bully.
Mm.
Gail texted back and was like, you know what? you're right. I'll let you go. I'll let you be free.
Wow.
Um, like
Won't God do
years
it
I've been
though? I
trying.
mean, wow.
Yes, yes. Um, Now it wasn't super easy after that. After a couple of months, there were times where he was still messaging me or
Mm.
finding ways to create profiles. He did end up sending that collateral to my family. But you know what? God's good because I was living in fear every day of, okay, what if they get this picture? Okay, well, they got the pictures and my parents weren't mad at me. Like, even my mother, she realized that I felt stuck in this traumatic relationship and
Mm,
she took my side. So that weight was lifted off of me.
that's amazing.
And yes, even more so, my ex became smaller and smaller in my life. And God, I can't do anything but just give him the glory. I thank God for the people that he put in my life to remind me my worth as a daughter of God.
Yeah, yeah, that's so beautiful. It really just makes me think of like my own walk of how, I got out of my abusive relationship and I kind of grew up in a similar household. My parents are still married, but I grew up in church and we were there every Sunday and dressed our best and but when we got home, it was a different story. And my mom was really verbally and emotionally abusive to me, and to my dad. And I was also the golden child, and she just kind of took everything out on me. I don't really understand why, even to this day. But her memory of stuff is a lot different than mine. Um, and
Yeah,
I know that that's like just her way of coping with her own trauma. Um, and not to say that it's okay. Um, but sometimes we don't get the oh, I'm sorry conversation
right.
from the people who have hurt us the deepest. And that's okay because God is the one where we really find that healing and that grace to just keep going. But when you live in an abusive relation or an abusive home, you do like reach out to those things and those people and um like just from my own trauma that I experienced as a child with sexual trauma and everything and um I was just searching and searching and I found a 26-year-old guy when I was 19 years old and um yeah, I was living in California at the time and it was bad. He went back, he was French, and he went back to France and he started love bombing me and was like, I love you, and like all these things. I was like, oh my gosh, a French guy who's like way older than me loves me. And um, yeah, it was absolutely insane. And that just like began my cycle of abusive relationships. And when you were talking about like you felt God just kind of give you over to your sin, like that's what he does, when we keep fighting and fighting against him, as he's with us and trying to get our attention to be like, hey, come home, come to me, but we keep choosing the world. He's gonna let us sit in that. And when you said that, like you just felt like you didn't feel the comfort, I feel that to my core. Because I was sitting on a couch when at a party where I was just like, what is happening right now, and um even the moment where I ran back to God like years later, um
Mhm.
I was on a couch just laying there crying. It was like what like and I heard God just say to me like you were happy once. And I was like trying to figure out when I was happy. And I was like, it was when I knew God. So like I ran back to him, and um I found myself in another abusive relationship, so that was cool. But the cycle. Uh, but God broke it, and I had when I like tried to end that relationship, I felt the same way you did. I knew I had God on my side, and it wasn't me trying to get out with fear, I had that strength. I had that resurrection power inside of me, ready to go.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that abusive cycle for me. And
Wow.
yeah, God was just, completely changing my life and taking the blinders off my eyes. And I'd look back at all of it. And as you're saying, I'm like, yes, same, same, like it's wild to see God's hand in all of that. And I'm just, it's so cool. It's so cool to just see how God, like, even when you're in the midst of it, and then you look back and you just see him, you think you're alone, but you never really are. And that's the
Mm.
beautiful part of it. Um, my mom, she was never physically abusive to me, so I'm so sorry that, your mom took that anger out on you. I remember seeing you post a photo of you in the hospital bed, all bandaged up with a black eye, and I was just like, what happened? Like, and you finally spoke out about your mom in this post, and so many people question survivors of abuse. Like, why didn't you speak out sooner? Why didn't you leave? And so I just kind of want to speak to that and to the hearts of those who are walking through abuse. Like, what was all of this like for you? And what can you speak into other survivors who might still be in the thick of it?
Yeah. Yeah. Um, oh my goodness. Yeah, it is so true that survivors get backlash. I
Mm.
don't understand why.
Either.
And then on top of that, there was my own family turning their backs on me because I broke a rule, a
Mm.
very significant rule in the African American community. While my mother, the post that you had saw, so my mother, she would snap at random times. There was very few times, or if any, times I've provoked her because my parents drilled into me that you honor your mother and father, you honor your mother and father. Yes, I did lie to them to go sneak out and try to escape. But as far as being disrespectful or anything, that was not me. And still, there was like the enemy you could see toiling with her mind.
Mm.
And so just one Monday morning, she snapped and she had been threatening me for weeks, saying that she was going to end my life. And that at the time, I didn't think she was actually going to do it. But she attempted to. And that's why I was rushed to the ER. And I felt like, okay, enough is enough. I also had the support system of my now husband, who was my fiance at the time, my closest best friends, my father, that was like, enough. You cannot go back to living with her.
Mm.
And um, I tried leaving several times before. The statistic is that most people that are in a domestic violence relationship or household, it takes them an average of 7 times before actually leaving and getting out of the situation. So it took me 4 times.
Mm.
Like I said earlier, my mother was spiritually abusive as well. So she would tell me anytime that I left, God doesn't want that for you. God wants you to be here with me. That's the only way that you're going to live his path. And if you stray from that path, something could happen to you. I have friends, their child missing, or maybe they lost their lives, or you could end up broke and out of wedlock, having children, just all these
Yeah.
things just being dumped on me that I felt like people wouldn't understand why I kept going back to her. So I kept it a secret for so long. But during the incident where she was attacking me, I was screaming for help for the first time. And the neighbors heard me and they called the police. The police were so kind. The firefighters were so sweet in taking me to the ER. But again, I broke an African American rule. You do not involve the police.
Mm.
So there were many elders in my family commenting on that same post saying, oh, well, that's not true. You weren't actually abused.
Wow.
So I,
Wow.
I can't explain it. And I'm glad that people like you and me, we don't understand um, what it's like to see someone's pain and
Question it,
want
doubt.
to, yeah, and question it and downgrade.
Yeah.
But I will say that that's just how the devil works. The
Yeah.
devil tries to isolate silence and put us in bondage. And that's why the Bible tells us that the truth will set us free.
Yes.
And Jesus is the truth, the way, and the life.
Yeah.
And so when you look to him, there's so much freedom.
Yeah.
Um, After like walking downstairs to go into the ambulance, like I know I looked crazy because the neighbors were looking at me. Like I looked physically crazy. My hair was all over the place. My skin, I had second and third degree burns
Oh
because
my
she
gosh.
attacked me with coffee. And I walked out with such a smile on my face. And I'm like, good morning, because God gave me this freedom. I knew
Yeah.
this is over. It's over. And I
Yeah.
got in the ambulance praying for her and praying for her
Wow.
safety and praying for her to be delivered. But I knew it's done. I'm free. And so that post was just another side of me going like, guys, unfortunately, like the enemy is real and he's trying to attack. Do not let him isolate you.
Yes.
Jesus is wanting to set you free.
Yes. Yeah. I can't remember. It might be in Romans where it talks about like things that live in the darkness will come to light, and like
Mm.
that's when God, like his light just breaks that darkness and sets you free. And it when you like speak out against the things that you've been through, like when you share your testimony or you tell somebody what's really going on, like if you're in an abusive relationship or household or whatever it might be, you allow God's light to come in, and to shine in, and it allows the enemy's hold to loosen every time, and like I have felt that within my life. And the enemy is constantly like, well, I can use this to get to her, or I know her weakness, I'll just keep using that. So you have to just constantly be aware of your weaknesses so you don't fall prey to that, and um keep letting God's light just soak in. And that's why, like, I'm here to extinguish the darkness with every
Yes.
testimony that we share, because that's what he can do. And I see it in your life, and it's just like radiant Jesus. Like it's incredible.
Yeah.
Man, and Alex, man, I mean, he's been an awesome rock star of a husband for you. He is such like a gentle giant. Like, how tall is he?
Yeah. He's 6'5".
Yeah, 6'5". Okay, my husband, Anthony, he's 6'2", and like Alex is like bigger than him. I'm like, dude. Yeah, but he's so like gentle and quiet. And I'm like, oh, like you guys are just the cutest. So how,
Thank
like,
you.
when did you find Alex in all of this? Like, when did he just like pop up? Like, when did God just be like, here's this wonderful man who's going to walk through all of these things? And that's like God did the same thing for me with Anthony. Like, God brought him in and helped Anthony walk me through and out of my, abusive relationship, which is crazy. Um, and just like, how did you guys walk through this difficult season together?
Yeah, yeah. God is such an amazing artist.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be brief because it's the coolest story ever, and I'm so grateful for God for how He brought Alex into my life. My marriage, of course, it's not perfect. We're human, but oh my gosh, my just the fact that God has granted me the gift of marriage
Mm.
and being able to see a different side of God has just let me see how loving He is and that I can trust in God.
Yeah.
um, Alexander, we officially met on our first day of college, and he was the first one there. We both got to class super early. We were both like an hour and a half early because we were both nervous.
That's
First day of
precious.
college jitters, and we ran into each other, and he was like, "Have I seen you before?" And I thought he was flirting, so I rushed it off. But in reality, we learned over the years that we kept crossing paths since eighth grade. We would like go on vacation and he was there at the same time as me and we were like at the same stop and we were running into each other with friends and he saw me at the grocery store like years before, just lots of
Wow.
ways that God was like letting us cross and be like, not yet, not yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I got
And then I
goosebumps.
like, you got time, just I'm here. And God just it wasn't love at first sight. It wasn't like those sparks that I got with my ex, but there was something that was drawing me to him. And I thank God for that too, because that's a lot more stable.
Yeah.
Something that I could rely on knowing that, okay, this is God's hand in this. Um, but I wanted to share that about a year after finally leaving my mother's household after that traumatic event that I shared, and then I almost immediately got married to Alex, and we were having a pretty blissful first year. We were both walking in freedom and rejoicing in God. And I was working at the gym, and one of the members, he is an acupuncturist. So he offered, because I was in aches and pains, he was like, like if I stick some needles in you, you might feel better. And I was like, okay. So I went over to his practice and I tried it. And he was checking my pulse and he was like, in like a very like stoic, deep way. He was like, what happened to you when you were 16?
Oh, whoa.
And my eyes shot open and I was like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But that was opening a door for God to start speaking into me that I didn't want to hear.
Mm.
One of the worst events happened when I was 16 with my mother, and I had been pushing it down. And after the acupuncturist asked me about the event that happened, that must be so traumatic because my pulse was still holding on to it five
Yeah.
years later.
Wow.
Um, God kept almost nagging me and putting making me recall that event. And it wasn't until I was in a moment of worship where I was like, okay, God, you know that I'm not trying to think about this time when I was 16. Fine, fine. What do you have to show me? And so immediately I'm taken back to this time where it was before church. I was waiting on my mother. I was already ready for church and it was cold outside. So I was in this like tight red petticoat. And my mother had this idea in her head that I was rolling my eyes at her, although she couldn't see me. Very demonic. Something wasn't fully right with her. And she came out of nowhere and she attacked me. She punched me so hard in the
Mm.
eye, and I collapsed to the floor. She dragged me by my hair through the living room, through the foyer, and into my bedroom and just pushed me in there. She was cursing at me the whole time I was screaming, and she pushed me into my room and slammed the door behind her. And she went into her room doing her makeup so that she can go into church. And I felt like in that moment, God, where are you? I feel
Yeah.
quite literally backed into a corner again. Yes, I'm 16. Yes, I'm a big girl, but I was raised to believe to honor your mother and father. I feel like I can't defend myself. Why aren't you doing anything? And so there I was in a state of worship at 21 years old. God, why are you bringing this memory back to me?
Yeah.
And God tells me, ask me what you were afraid to ask me. I'm like, okay, God, where were you?
Mm.
And without saying a word, it was like an outer body experience. I could see myself at 16 crying and feeling alone, but I felt this presence of comfort and peace that was there the whole time and I didn't know. And then it takes me to see my husband where he was just a few miles away. And God was showing me, I was here with you, but at the same time, I was preparing a household of peace.
Oh my
I
God.
was giving you what you were praying for. I was working on it. I'm there with you. Um, so that's how God has brought Alex into my life. I have been able to genuinely see the hands of God. And I think I had that experience because I was just so stubborn. And God was like, okay, fine, I have to show this girl what that I've been here for her. But in a state of darkness and hopelessness, God has shown me that the prayers that I have forgotten and I thought that God had given up on, God has never forgotten.
Wow, yeah.
Nothing comes back and void.
Yeah, no, and that, I feel that like to my core, like when you know nothing but trauma and know nothing but abuse, it's so easy to question God. Like, where were you? Like, why did you allow all of these terrible things to happen to me? And like, those were the questions that just took over my mind, constantly. It was just like one thing after another in my life. And I didn't have anybody to talk to. Like, my family just pushed everything under the rug,
Mm.
with all the sexual abuse that I went through. And um, it was just like I felt so alone. And I tried to take my life twice, and like I felt God pull on my shirt when I was taking my last breath, when I tried to like drown myself. And um I know he was right there, and like I feel that, you know, I don't it's so weird to say I felt that comfort, say, like
Mm.
you're saying, like in that moment, because I was like, thank you, God, for not allowing me to leave, and I look at my life now, like I wouldn't have anything of what I have, I wouldn't be a mom, I wouldn't have Anthony, and I wouldn't have this testimony to share and to be here being used by God to help extinguish the darkness, and it's so easy to question, but God is literally always there. I mean, the Bible tells us like he leaves the 99 for the one. It does like he doesn't say any type of clause, He just goes. He comes after us and
Yeah.
he never leaves us. And I am like, that is just the most beautiful moment that God allowed you to have that moment to see God's goodness and his grace, and he was just preparing everything. And now you have this story that can help so many women, and um there's a Bible verse. It's on my Instagram. I can't I'm so bad at remembering like actual Bible verses, but it tells us like God, like we go through these things in order to walk with other survivors and like other people who know the same pain, all to
Mm.
bring God the glory, and to bring that comfort that we know, to bring that strength that we have been able to experience. And that's what the body of Christ is all about, like coming together and lifting each other up and loving one another. And I mean, oh my gosh, God's goodness and like the details of all of that is insane. Like, oh my gosh. I'm sorry, I just like broke down sobbing.
The
Uh,
goal is to start
yeah.
crying, but when you get moved.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just like, I've been just over here and God chills this entire time of just hearing all of it. And like, God has just been speaking to me through you and, your journey. And like, God wants us to bring him those hard questions, like, he
Yes.
doesn't want us to run from him. And my hard questions made me run from him. Like I ended up denying God as my savior because I was so filled with those doubts and those questions of why did you allow all these terrible things to happen to me? And I was so angry at God, and I put myself in that position of being around like atheists who made me doubt even more. And that was with my ex or the French guy who was 26 years old, and I was living in France, and I was just lost. I was so lost and so utterly broken. And the enemy just he used that every single minute, every question I had, he took that opportunity to just keep drilling that into me that God, hated me and didn't love me and that I wasn't worthy of him. I was too dirty, too nasty, too broken. And um I just never believed that God could love me or accept me as I was. And those are just absolute lies. And I never believed that I could be loved by a man in a pure way. And um just from that abuse with everything. And um then I found Anthony, and it was so hard for me to finally accept or believe that I was safe, that I was truly genuinely loved by somebody, um and that he wasn't going to leave me or snap and
Yeah.
turn to being abusive. And I know like so many other like survivors go through those same things. So like have you and Alex had to I can't even talk now, face those like similar things, or has it been difficult for you to trust Alex or to let him in? What does that look like for y'all?
Yeah, yeah. Again, I thank God for the gift of marriage. Our difficulty came from me being scared, but I of the relationship of just like what you said, that um being scared, hopefully he wouldn't lash out or he wouldn't turn against me or leave me. But the way that I was raised, my mother drilled into us that if you're upset about something, you make it known and you lash out to your fullest extent. And so anytime that I felt scared, I wouldn't hit my husband, but I would snap, I would get loud with him. And I thank God that he stayed with me because I don't want him to be married to the girl that I used to be.
Mm.
He deserves so much more than that. But I thank God so much that
Thank you.
Alex, in all of those times, he met me with mercy and grace and patience
Yeah.
and that's the only thing that could have broke that. Because if I was with my ex and I was mad at him, I would get loud, then he would get loud, and we would just feed into this moment of rage and sin and hurting each other in this hamster wheel of toxicity. But then with my now husband, I could be very upset with him, and I'm like, well, why would you do that? And he would just be so nice to me. And that would immediately break down whatever I was trying to put up against him. This wall that I had against him and this guard that I had that was so strong. Only love can break that. And
Yeah.
he did that in a safe and respectful way that was respectful to him too. But just like when Jesus tells us in the gospel saying that we need to turn the other cheek, my husband was the perfect example of that. And that made me realize, oh my gosh, okay, I don't have to be cruel. I can be kind.
Mm.
I can be heard and be kind.
Yeah.
Um,
Good.
he just chipped away every wall with love, patience, and kindness.
That is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, God is so good. I mean, you saying like I don't want Alex to be married to that old girl that you were, I'm right there with you. I mean, I used to be so difficult to love, and he just thought Anthony just, he didn't leave me, and he loved me through it and loved me like Jesus and helped me, heal in all of the ways that I was just so broken and so afraid of letting somebody in finally and fully. Um, and I'm so glad that that girl is gone, and it's like, oh my God. God is just, he's just so good, And if you're in it, whoever's listening, like, God is gonna bring the redemption for you. He's gonna bring you out of it and through it, no matter where you are. And oh gosh. Bye, old Catherine.
Dying to self, goodbye, long gone.
Yes, yes. And that's like what marriage is too, like just the sanctification even of it all, the covenant, we get to die of ourselves and every single day in our relationship with Jesus and becoming more like God and allowing him to be what we represent within our marriage and within that covenant of a marriage. And um I mean, it's really incredible to see how God has just framed everything. you know?
Yeah.
Did all of this strengthen y'all's marriage and or did it shape anything in particular for y'all and you with
Yeah.
God, your relationship
Yeah.
with God?
Yeah, definitely. Fruits of the spirit. I thought I understood that, but it was just a very superficial, on the surface way. I tell him that he is the first person that I've met that has taught me grace outside of God, of course, but I've never met someone that was so grace giving. My husband didn't grow up in a Christian household, so it's amazing how God has just brought us together. So we lean on each other to learn different things. But for me to understand, oh, okay, this is love, this is kindness, this is patience, this is goodness, this is all the things that God has promised that we should have as believers and that we should seek after. That has been shaping our relationship. And there's times when I fail.
Yeah. Yeah. We're human.
I come back.
It's gonna happen. But thankfully, you have Alex, who's just full of grace, right? And like, that's the beautiful part of it all. We just get to keep showing each other grace and showing Jesus in all of the ways. And I just want to give a shout out to you matching your kitchen too, though. You look so cute.
Like lately, is your favorite color green? I don't know. I'm drawn to like more natural everything
Hey,
right now. I'm gonna
hey,
see.
this is my water bottle, so all the
Yeah.
natural tones. But the green, I'm like, I love the green. Like you can ask Anthony. I'm just like green all the things. So you just look so cute. I mean, you're just cute in general, so but I feel that with being drawn to the green. It's Jesus, being connected to the divine. Oh, this has been so life-giving. Like you said, just like man. It's been life-giving for me. And I just love leaving our listeners with real life practical steps for healing. So what are three? It doesn't have to be three. You can have one or two, five, I don't care. Just some practical steps for someone that they can start doing for themselves to either get out of an abusive situation, heal from it, or even how to walk with this situation or in this situation with their spouse if
Yeah.
they're walking through this healing journey together, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I picked three of my favorite ones. And I'm a teacher, so I'm very visual. Number
Yes.
one, catch all the little foxes. I saved this scripture. It's from Song of Solomon, 2:15. Take us, the foxes, the little foxes that spoil the vines, for our vines have tender grapes. And so Solomon is speaking in reference of the little foxes, their little issues that could come into a relationship. And if you don't take care of all the little things, it's going to build and it's going to spoil the relationship. So make sure that you take care of all of those things. If something is triggering you or hurting you, if something is reminding you of your past and not necessarily it's something specifically to do with your spouse, but it's hurting, catch those little foxes right there.
Love
That's going to help strengthen your marriage.
Yeah.
Number two, seek God's character, not what he does. This took years to put into practice for me,
Same
but
girl. It's so good. Like it literally changed my entire perspective of God and like my life.
yeah. And you have to be careful about what the churches you go to because there's so many places that talks about God will do this for you and God will provide for you and God will do this. Yes, he will.
Mm,
Yes, he will. But even if it's not according to your plan, God is still good. And so
yes.
it's really helpful to dive deep and understand God's character and hide those words in your heart so that when you are hurting, because hurting is real and pain
Yeah.
is real and what you went through is real,
Yeah.
when those things happen, you're able to reflect and be like, okay, God, I know you're all powerful. I know you are just. I know you are holy. You are true. You are love. You are good. You are just. You are patient. You got to have that confidence in
Yeah.
Him when you're hurting.
Yeah. That's good. That's power. Yeah. I love that.
And number three, this one is my favorite one because it's very recent for me. know that your past is nailed to the cross.
Mm.
Earlier we were talking about like our old self and making sure that we die to ourselves daily. That's in First Corinthians. But this is very much a new revelation for me. Even though I've been a born again believer, I never fully understood what it's like to die to yourself daily. And recently, my husband and I were playing, and he didn't realize this, but he was doing something that was could potentially trigger an anxiety attack. And I thank God that I've been delivered from chronic panic attacks after living with my mother. I was diagnosed with PTSD. So my husband has seen it all, and getting so much better. But my husband, he was nudging me. And suddenly I was starting to snap back
Mm.
into a place where I felt very defensive and I was about to go into a flight or fight mode. I could feel it coming. But then Jesus reminded me, wait a minute, that girl died a long time ago. That fear, I have taken that from you.
Mm.
I have
Wow.
nailed that to the cross for you.
Wow.
And I was able to say in that moment and be like, oh, okay, yeah, I don't have to be afraid. Now, I did still let my husband know about like a boundary afterwards, but I didn't
Yeah.
have to lash out or snap at him out of fear because I knew that God had already taken that to the cross for me.
Let's go. That's so good. Ah, I love that. That's gonna be, I'm taking that one for myself. Because I still get defensive over things. And Anthony's like, why are you getting defensive? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, something is, inside of me telling me to be defensive and protect myself. So that's really good. I'm taking that. Thank you. You just spoke life into me. I love that. You did great. Those were
Yay!
all very incredible 3 practical steps. And
Yay!
yeah, thank you. I love number 3. That one's my favorite too. They were all really, really good. You're incredible. You're just a light. And I hope everybody goes and finds Tacora on Instagram. You can find her at Tacora Divine. And what's your handle for your mirror images?
Yes. Okay. Mirror his image. It's a Christian apparel. Everything is written backwards so that when you look in the mirror, you can read the scripture forwards.
Yes, it's so freaking cool. I love it so much. I wanted to start doing merch for Meet Me at the Well. And
Good.
um I love your whole idea. It's just so beautiful. So you're just amazing. And I thank you so much, Cora, for giving away some of your time to chat with us and being so vulnerable, and opening up your heart, being authentic and sharing your testimony and healing journey, all with the desire to help others walk through their desert too. And that's what it's all about. That's what God has really called us to. And it has been an absolute honor to meet you at the well and talk about how life with Jesus helps you get through even the most difficult seasons. I pray for those who are listening that you are filled with hope and encouragement and comfort as you continue to meet with Jesus at the well. We love you, friend, and we are here cheering you on and praying for you. Love you always.